Here at the United Nations in New York, world leaders are meeting to review progress on the Millennium Development Goals, or MDGs. In some parts of the world, countries are falling far short of meeting these anti-poverty targets. Who's to blame? In this BBC World debate, we ask MDGs, what's holding us back? Hello, I'm Zeinab Badawi. Welcome to the Ford Foundation in New York City. Our panel and our audience this week ranges from world leaders to grassroots activists. They're all involved in their own way in efforts to achieve the MDGs by 2015. Who's on our panel? Professor Bingu wa Mutharika, President of Malawi since 2004. He's also the current chair of the African Union. Robert Zoellick, the president of the World Bank, a veteran on the international scene. Previously, he was the US Trade Representative. Esther Brimmer, US Assistant Secretary of State for International Organizations. She's one of the most senior African-American women in the State Department and a specialist in international relations. Charles Abugray, an economist from Ghana who's been very active at the grassroots level. He's just become head of the UN Millennium Campaign in Africa. And last but not least, Sandhya Venkateswaran, a civil society activist from India, from the organization Don't Break Your Promises. That's part of the global call to action against poverty. That's our panel. Welcome to you and our audience here in New York. Now, before we start our discussions on the Millennium Development Goals, let us just set the scene for you. The BBC's development correspondent, David Loyne, has this overview.
In Namibia, Africans protest noisily against poverty. Their target, African leaders meeting nearby at a summit. To these activists, their leaders' promises to reduce poverty ring hollow.
We demand justice for our people. We demand that our leaders begin to serve the interests of our people.
The alternative People's Summit had reason to be sceptical. 10 years ago, at the dawn of the new millennium, world leaders signed up to a new partnership, linking rich and poor nations in an agreement to halve the number of people living in extreme poverty or hunger. It was the first of 8 Millennium Development Goals. Focus on the MDGs has made some difference. Millions of children now have free primary education. HIV drugs are cheap and plentiful. The eradication of malaria no longer seems an impossible dream. Globally, there's been a big fall in the number of people living in extreme poverty, from 42% back in the base year of 1990 to around 18% today. But the picture is uneven. China's success disguises failure elsewhere. In sub-Saharan Africa, the improvement has been far less, with around half the population still desperately poor. So, who's to blame? Well, some point the finger squarely at leaders in Africa and the developing world.
I believe that Africa is poor because of, principally today, the choices made by its political leadership. I think they've made poor choices, often based on entirely rational decisions, to keep themselves in power, which have been very short-termist, which have not put people's welfare first, but have put their survival and staying in power first.
In Malawi, Angela takes a different view. Only a few years since famine stalked the land, government subsidies for fertilizer have led to bumper harvests. Initially, rich world donors opposed the subsidies as they might distort the market, changing their mind only when the programme proved so successful that it's now seen as a model.
I want to appeal to the donor community to support Malawi more and deeper so that we can end hunger in our country.
Although aid levels are rising, they remain